without any further delay, somebody who I've spoken of with effusive praise on this show and on the old KGO show. I just think she's terrific. I think we probably agree on most things. We might not agree and check literally every box on everything, but more to the point, I just love her heart, her passion. She joins us now, and we've missed her. And it's great to have Pat Thurston with us, everyone.
Hey.
Look at you. You look great. Wow, Pat Thurston. You really look glammy.
Well, really?
Yeah, I think you look really great.
It's not being yelled at and called names every day on the radio. I don't know.
You got your hair did.
I did. Oh, I did get my hair did. I did. Yeah. It was this week. I had it cut.
Girl, you just woo.
Yeah, you look good, girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Had to do that. I miss you guys.
Well, we miss you too.
I mean, it's so freaking weird to have so many things going on, to have an election that's coming up, to have had the January 6th Select Committee last hearing that we weren't able to really engage the listeners with. On the air at KGO. It's just been so awful, just awful.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons what Pat is talking about that I wanted to do this thing, because I just felt as though when you do this for a living, and I'm not just talking about being a broadcaster, that's one thing, but I'm talking about when you make the mother's milk of your life, what's going on in the world and in the country, and you have strong views on it, and you think you have takes that are important, and you also want a conversation with an audience, you need a place to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'd encourage you to also pursue the next thing. And I know you'll come on the show when you have the next thing, and I'm sure that there are conversations going on and stuff. And I'm not prying, but I just feel you have a voice that needs to be heard. So.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark. I'm looking at different options. I'm even looking at the potential for, leaving radio, but I don't want to. I mean, it's been my life for decades, and I like it. And it also, when I first started working at KGO and Jack Swanson interviewed me, one of the questions he asked, which I thought was a brilliant question, was, why do you want to be on the air? What does it do for you individually? And he said, I don't care about, I'm important, I need to get the message out, blah, blah. He said, what's it do for you? And I told him that what it really does for me is that it forces me to be aware of what's going on, to keep abreast of everything that's happening. I mean, a lot of people pay attention to the news, but when you're hosting a show like that, you're doing more than paying attention. You're digging in. And I think it was good for me. It was just good for me as a person to give me a greater understanding of what's going on in the world. Of course, it was also frustrating and gave me nightmares.
Well, I mean, there's that too. The thing about having a show and, as you say, sort of going to school every day, right, for things you want to talk about on the show, or for information and details that you want to add to things you already talked about on the show. I think that does get in your head. I find myself constantly going, I want to share this with the audience, or I want to mention this, or wow, I should have mentioned that. I do a lot of that. Damn it. I wish I'd mentioned that. You know what I mean?
As soon as you get off the air, you're thinking that.
Yeah. And there's a pace about even this show, because I've tried to keep the show very much like the radio show. Right. There's a pace that almost brings you to the next thing. One of the things I loved about your show was you felt as though you had a little more breathing room than I feel like I had. I had a 2-hour show, and with a lot of commercials. When they used to break our podcasts out for the hour, how much actual time was there talking? Maybe 40 minutes or something like that. Yeah.
It was less. I think it was less than 30. I mean, the bottom of the hour news break was oft times 9.5 minutes, sometimes
that's right.
minutes long. It was kind of crazy. And so that was also kind of frustrating, because we had so many commercials that one would think that, we were making money hand over fist. But, as we talked about when we did the last thing together, there were a lot of things that were happening behind the scenes that we weren't involved in. where a lot of commercials went on the air, but KGO still wasn't making any money with those commercials because a lot of them were giveaways in order to get paid advertising on other stations. I mean, there were just so many frustrations with that. And I didn't want to pay any attention to it. I just wanted to do the on-air product. I figured if we did a great product, then we leave it up to everybody else to be able to sell it, advertise it, market it, make sure that, you know, listeners knew what we were doing and that it was worthwhile. But they weren't doing that for us.
No, I had the same view you did, which is don't get into how many people are listening. Don't get into how the station is doing. Don't get into revenue. But it was frustrating not to have stronger sales. And also, you know, we took a station, by the way, we always talk about the ratings. We had, you know, decent saleable ratings. I mean, and trending up. And both you and I had really strong numbers in our show. I used to get the emails, and I really didn't try to pay a lot of attention to it, but you do want to know, are we trending up? Are we trending down?
Right.
And we were trending up. But you do need a commitment on the sales side, and it just didn't seem as though there was that anymore. And, you know, that can be informed by other things, to be fair to everyone. You know, they had big numbers to hit for what they were paying for the Giants, what they're paying for the Niners. So, you know, you're trying to hit those numbers too, and there's sales incentives associated with that. So I get what a tough spot it is, especially when you're selling a cluster of stations. But, you know, Pat, at WABC, which was a Cumulus station, just to talk for a second, because we both had the shared experience, then we can talk politics. At WABC, it was a Cumulus station in New York.
Okay.
They sold that station, and I forget how much they sold it for. Maybe, Kim, you can look
Google it.
Yeah, I think it's, but they sold it to a rich guy. And that rich guy, now it was the same deal. Can't make any money. WABC isn't what it used to be. It used to be a dominant thing. But Rush Limbaugh, now he's not there anymore. Blah, blah, blah. They sell WABC to a rich guy. And now he has staffed up sales, and they are crushing it.
Yeah.
They have a highly successful talk station at WABC now, and they're all making money.
Right.
The same thing could have happened at KGO, potentially. But my point in mentioning it, what? Did you hear the cat? There's something going on. There's something awful going on. Oh my God!
You need to go take care.
I kind of need to check on this.
You should check on the kitty.
It's okay. Pat can fill in for you because we got the talk show host right here.
I've never had this happen. This is unbelievable. But I've got a very sick animal, so let me just check quickly.
Look at your kitty
Pat, handle this anyway. I'll talk soon. Okay, we'll be right back. All right.
So I actually do want. I do want to talk to you because I just read that story about Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker being in a dead heat. Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And it's not just there. In Arizona, Carrie Lake, how does Carrie Lake have the kind of numbers that she has? You know, one of the things that kind of surprises me about the electorate is that they voted for Joe Biden. They voted for him. Joe Biden won the election. People came out in droves during the presidential election. Since that time, the Republicans, and particularly the people who are, you know, that we're wondering how on earth are people supporting these individuals, they have pushed this big lie that the election was fraudulent. So essentially what they're doing is they're election deniers. They are denying that the people who voted for Biden voted for Biden. Why aren't those people outraged? And why aren't they coming out in droves for this election to say, oh yeah, you think you're going to deny my vote? Well, watch this sucker. And they're just not doing it. And I'm not exactly sure why. You look at Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, the caliber of the individuals that we're talking about is just night and day. When did it happen that character no longer became something that people in the United States cared about when it came to the people who were running our government? Character used to be something that we really did care about. And I'm wondering if it's the problem, if the problem lies with the media. That the media, and it was just same thing with Trump, that because Herschel Walker is, can I say shit?
Yeah,
I prefer you not, but let's try to keep it broadcasty. But that's okay. You said it, so don't worry about it.
But he's you have to dump that, John Daly. So I mean, he's a clown. It's a clown show instead of the S word.
They're looking at their social media.
Yeah.
But because it's a clown show, he gets all the media attention.
That's right.
How many times do you see stories about Raphael Warnock, who is a really good person, who's doing really good things as a senator from Georgia? How many times do you hear stories about that? But every single day, it's Herschel Walker, Herschel Walker, Herschel Walker. And you know what they've always said, Mark? There's no such thing as bad publicity.
And you know something, I really love that you've identified this, because this was the Trump syndrome. You know, everybody wanted to cover Trump because he was such a train wreck. He would say anything. He would insult minority groups. He wouldn't apologize. He doubled down. That was in the ramp up to the election. He got all the media coverage, despite the fact that, you know, Bernie Sanders was pulling bigger crowds as a populist candidate. Okay, this was with Hillary Clinton running against Trump. But Walker is stupefyingly awful and incompetent as a candidate. It is grotesque how we have now, as you've suggested, the culture of politics has now become so celebrity infested that his high profile, and by the way, it was always that name recognition, okay? But there was always you felt a presumption of importance that is ascribed to competence. And this guy can't even spell policy, you know? But I don't know that Trump could spell policy, meaning there was no policy philosophy underpinning anything Trump viewed as important, right? He just viewed himself as important. And I think that's true with Walker. He's doing the heavy lifting for the Christian right.
Yeah.
I've listened to a bunch of his speeches. It's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I love that, you know, there's nothing wrong with Christianity and Jesus and all of that stuff. But when you're using it as cover for really not understanding anything, I think it's a very dangerous thing. And it's unfortunately an effective ploy.
This is a problem within the entire Republican Party. Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she even lost all of her committee assignments because she was such a train wreck, because she was so awful. Look at her. She won the primary. She's going to win in the election. And you look at Lauren Boebert. You know, you look at some of these candidates who are just horrific individuals. Since when did the Republican Party become the party that is anti-police, certainly the Capitol Police, that's anti-abiding by the law when you look at the lawbreakers within their party, that is anti-integrity, and because they're hypocrites when it comes to the Christianity that they claim to embrace. I mean, this guy, Herschel Walker, you know, I'm all for I'm pro-choice. I'm all for women's reproductive rights. There's no question about that. He's not. Herschel Walker is not. And when the information comes out, not by just one woman, but by multiple women, that he's paid for their abortions, he huddles with this religious right and comes away with their stamp of approval on him.
Yeah,
it's still not admitting his involvement here.
And as I've said before, I have no problem if you want to pay for women the abortions, and you know, if women you've been involved with get abortion, I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with you but don't tell me about your abortion position, as you've said, Pat. You know, Walker has such an inflexible abortion position, you know, even in the case of rape and incest, to kind of put a sharp edge on it. But here's a little of Walker on the stump, and it's important because I can't believe they're in a dead heat. Walker may actually beat Warnock for that seat.
I know.
And as God got me up, my mom said I was big bone. You know what that meant? That I was fat. And then I used to have a speech impediment where I couldn't put a sentence together. But because of the grace of God, God got me up to go to the University of Georgia. And then, no. And then I got a chance.
I'll remind you, he lied about graduating top of his class at the University of Georgia, where he didn't even graduate. I mean, again, it's not like you're allowed not to graduate college. You're allowed not to go to college. Right. But don't say that you graduated top of your class at University of Georgia when you dropped out.
Heisman Trophy. And then I got a chance to go to the 1992 Olympic team. And then I got a chance to play 15 years of pro ball. But then all of a sudden, let me tell you this, sometimes God got to break you to build you back. Because what happened to me is something happened. I'll tell you, I never drank before in my life. never tasted beer, never had any alcohol, never had any drugs in my system, don't even take medicine.
You see how these these stump speeches is what I was going to say, but Trump did the same thing, where they kind of meander and you're not even into policy at all, and it's just about, aren't those people, the liberals, the Democrats, aren't they awful? And as long as we agree on that, the rest of it is all just fill.
Yeah.
It's like, he's just talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but he's a policeman too. He's
right.
All of a sudden, I realized that somebody told me I had a mental problem. I go, mental problem? How in the world can Herschel Walker have a mental problem? I'm talking about myself in third person, but I know that. And all of a sudden, I had to go to this hospital. So that's when I said God had to break you to build you back. Because then he washed me in the blood of Jesus. Because that's when I came back up, because he said he need a warrior, because I'm getting ready to go against a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what I'm getting ready to go against. This man here that I'm going against try to separate my family. Because I don't know if you've seen what he said. He said America need to apologize for its whiteness. And I said, well, America has apologized for its whiteness, but what we've done now is we're trying to get a vote and take you down in that elevator to fool you, because what is happening to us is you've forgotten about the people that elected you to go to office.
So you get the deal.
Not that he's stupid.
Well, but I'd also suggest he's, along the way, he's hitting important cultural things that might resonate culturally. Okay.
Yeah, racism.
Racism. And I would suggest in the Deep South that whole story of God and God building me back up, and all the more times you can mention God and Jesus, the better there.
Yes, yeah. But if you're really a Christian, if you're really religious, and especially if you are a Black evangelical, for example, you should be drawn far more to the Reverend Raphael Warnock than you are to the football player and liar Herschel Walker. I mean, it makes sense. Raphael Warnock is a brilliant individual who is committed to God, who has been committed to God, who has been the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, the same church that Martin Luther King was the pastor of. He has been that, and he continues living a life of Christianity, of love, walking in the steps of Jesus. And yet this guy comes in, this false prophet, and they're so fooled by it. Because of what? Because of the white evangelicals who have really turned their back on Christ, and instead they're pursuing this religious fervor of theirs, which results in fascism. If they succeed, it's fascism. And I don't think Jesus Christ would have voted for fascism.
Yeah, I have a question. Jesus. Yes, of course. Kim McAllister, everyone.
Yes,
Go ahead,
Kim. I wanted
Kim,
to put to Pat, what do you think about the pitting of women's rights against the economy in this election? Mm-hmm. Either your rights, you're going to row your vote, or you're more concerned about the economy. And if you're concerned about inflation, high gas prices, that's the way you vote Republican. And if you're concerned about, reproductive rights, you vote Democrat. Do you think that's true?
I need you to hold that response before you answer. I've got to quickly just check in with Steve Moskowitz, who is our sponsor, keeping the lights on. I do want to address that because it's amazing to me. Yet I did predict it, that the Roe effect would evaporate. I said it over and over, and I want to get your impression on Roe and the economy and what will take precedence with the voters. So we're so happy Pat Thurston is with us, and a quick check-in with Steve Moskowitz, and then we'll get back to
the Mark Thompson Show.
He is Steve Moskowitz.
Pat, how great to see you.
Yeah, that's right. Can we put Pat back in to say hi to Steve?
Hi, Steve Moskowitz. I miss talking to you.
I miss talking with you, and as you know, I want to talk with you again.
Yes, and we will.
Oh,
good. I'm looking forward to
that. I don't know what's going on between those two, but now I'm getting uncomfortable. All right. All right, Pat, we'll talk to you in a moment. Steve, I do want to get with you and talk taxes. We talk about ERC, and we talk about it repeatedly because I think it represents such great potential for people. But of course, you handle individual taxes and corporate taxes and business taxes and all the situations that might result from mistakes that people have made or not paying their taxes. I mean, these are all issues that you can handle quite routinely sometimes in your business at Moskowitz.
That's right, Mark. We're a firm that handles everything in tax. And those are common problems. People don't file tax returns for years. People can't pay their taxes. They're being audited, or they need advice. I'm thinking about doing this. What's the best way to do it? Because what you don't want to hear from somebody is, oh, too bad you did it that way. So we give tax advice, tax planning. Here it is, November. Next month's the end of the year. Well, rather than engaging what I call March madness, which is, I'm not talking about college basketball, I'm talking about you're mad because you owe so much in taxes. Now's the time to do something about it with tax planning. And if you take a look at Apple Computer, that pays less taxes than mom and pop corner grocery store, you'll see that the head of Apple says that he spends a lot of time talking with the Apple tax lawyers about doing this. That's what we do for much smaller business. And ERC is great. The federal government is giving away up to $26,000 for every employee that an employer has. And it's a gift. It's not a loan. They just give you the money. And there's a lot of confusion here because there's two ways to qualify. The easy way, which is a certain drop in gross revenue. And the bottom line is we start that way too. If you qualify in the easy way, sure, we'll do it. But a lot of firms stop there and say, well, that's it. Your gross revenue didn't drop enough, and goodbye. There's a second way, and the law says either or. The second way is a facts and circumstances test. And we go over all that with you, how you've been affected by the COVID restrictions. On the other hand, you want to avoid, like the plague, the scamsters that are committing frauds in your name doing an ERC. So we're a tax law firm. We've been in tax practice for over 30 years. We're here for you. We want to get you every dollar to which you're legally entitled and make sure you steer clear of trouble.
You can reach Steve Moskowitz at 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL. You can call him at that number and say, hey, I saw you talking to Mark, and I have this situation. Can you help me? 888-TAX-DEAL. You can also reach him online, Moskowitz, LLP, MOSKOWITZ, LLP.com. Steve, love seeing you. I'm glad you had a chance to say hey to Pat.
Always a pleasure. It was a great pleasure for me too with Pat.
All right. Have a good weekend, Steve Moskowitz. Thanks, man. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thanks to all the different ways you help us out with our YouTube show. This is our second week, isn't it, John? I forget what is it, Kim? Our second?
3.5.
Third week?
3.5.
3.5 weeks. Wow, that's really great.
Smashed it.
Smash it.
Iron
with your
rod.
Iron rod. Women, don't forget. Has Courtney ever forgotten your slights, Mark? That's from Jim Avila with a super chat. Wow. Thank you very much, Jim Avila. 1999. It was almost worth getting.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Young Thug is here.
Getting taken out. Thank you, Jim. But I want to get back to Pat on just that point. Do women represent a real potential to vote for Democrats in this midterm because of what happened with Roe at the Supreme Court level and what may likely happen with reproductive rights beyond Roe? I mean, as you're well aware, I mean, contraception could be at risk.
That's right. Jim is right. Jim said he made the point that women's voter registration has skyrocketed. And in terms of early voting, according to Michael Moore, and who of us can doubt Michael Moore? According to Michael Moore, in the early voting numbers, women have outpaced men substantially. So that bodes well for Democrats. Look, the economy, remember Bill Clinton and it's the economy, stupid? Of course, people vote according to the economy. The Democrats have not done a very good job of explaining how the economy got to where it is, the result of the pandemic in particular, and what the United States, in comparison to the rest of the world, has done successfully in order to get the economy on the right track. We know that 260 jobs, I think, were created this last month. We know that jobs are good, unemployment is down, wages are up, but we also know that inflation is cutting into all of that. And that's what people are paying attention to. I notice it when I go to the grocery store. Gas prices are beginning to come down, finally, but they're not where they should be, not by a long shot. But, Democrats really need to be out there talking about this in terms of what have the Republicans told you they're going to do that's actually going to make a difference in the economy, because they're not talking about policy. They're talking about cultural things. They're talking about voters' dissatisfaction. They're talking about how Biden wasn't able to solve inflation, that he wasn't able to do something about the economy that comes to the level of putting us completely back on track. And so the Republicans are offering nothing. They're offering nothing in terms of policy, nothing whatsoever. Democrats have. And who has stood in the way? It's been the Republicans. They've stood in the way all the way through when the Democrats are proposing legislation. And then, of course, we have those two outliers, Kirsten Sinema and that idiot Joe Manchin. We have those people who have also blocked the things that Democrats were attempting to do that really would have put us on a better track to battle all of this. But there's more. So women are coming out in droves to vote. You know who's not? Young people. And that stuns me, particularly since it's the GOP that is mounting these lawsuits against the Biden administration, who's attempting to assist people with their student loan debt. It's a very minor amount. It's only $10,000 for most people. It's the Pell Grant people who potentially could get up to $20,000. But in the grand scheme of things, the amount of student debt that's burdening people, it's small, but it is significant. And I'm stunned that college campuses around the country are not rife with people who are screaming about this and registering people to vote and getting them out to vote so that Democrats can maintain power, increase their power, and give them a modicum of assistance. And at least the Democrats are putting forth policy issues. Did you see the debate with, what's his name? Ryan? I mean, he so blew away his opponent because his opponent sounded like an idiot. J.D. Vance sounded like a complete fool. He had nothing to say. And Ryan had so many policy issues and facts and was the person who any sane person would say, this is the person who should be representing us.
The only person who on the GOP side who I think speaks so well, not about policy, because as you say, the policies are indefensible and they're not well articulated at all, and if they exist at all. But I think that Carrie Lake is scary because she's very media savvy. She used to be an anchor on television, I think, for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Now she's running for what she
is.
Yeah, she's really brutal. I wanted to play you a little bit of Obama on this time because I think the Democrats do have a messaging problem. And boy, it reminds you how good at messaging and running for office and articulating things Barack Obama is. Here he was on the stump, I think it was just yesterday.
The other day, a video came out of Governor Whitmer's opponent claiming that Democrats have been working for decades to topple the United States because they're still upset about losing the Civil War. And that COVID restrictions were part of some master plan to do this. Now, first of all, what?
I mean, that's just, you don't have that. Nobody's got that.
Instead of coming up with a story about how us having to watch Tiger King in our sweatpants was somehow some kind of government plot, imagine if she spent some time coming up with some ideas to create more jobs here in Michigan, or to give folks more health care, or to improve our schools. That's what you want from the governor of your state.
And you see, that's why he is such a powerful figure. And honestly, the Democrats, and we've seen it in the chat, everybody's saying, Democrats don't message well, Democrats don't message well.
Right.
It is messaging. I mean, it is an environment. And honestly, the Republicans have really staked out some pretty high ground media-wise. Fox News still has tremendous hold on many people. I'm talking about voters, not just viewers.
Right.
Because the older population does vote, and the older population watches a lot of Fox News.
That's right. That's right. And so they succumb to all of these lies. But you know what I always thought too, Mark? I always believed that the older generation believed in democracy. And so that's one of and democracy, when you look at, when the polling tells us what people are most interested in, Kim's right. The economy is number one. Roe is up there, but it's not the top issue, but it is an issue and an important issue. Who doesn't care about, I care about the economy.
Oh, it's important, but it's a question of whether people seem to be prioritizing the economy. This is not a surprise. We know it's the economy.
They're prioritizing the economy wrong, because if you're going to prioritize the economy, by all means, prioritize it. Who is better suited to do something about it? Republican administrations, when it comes to the economy, have not done particularly well in the United States of America.
Well, they're about tax cuts, the Republicans in general, and they talk infrastructure. I actually thought Trump actually might be able to push through an infrastructure plan, but of course he abandoned it. Just went for the tax plan. The guy who actually did an infrastructure plan, not even as much of a wish list as I had, or even that he had originally, but Joe Biden, he actually got it through. I got to give the guy credit.
Right, even with a divided Senate the way it was. I mean, this, and with Trump, it's like Roe used to be for the Republicans. Infrastructure was a great campaign issue. And then you have infrastructure week, 30 times during your administration. It used to be that way with Roe, that we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. We're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So they got all the white evangelicals on board with that idea, where most Republicans, people in power, I thought, really weren't interested in overturning Roe. They needed it as a campaign issue for their base. Now that they have succeeded with their Supreme Court confirmations, the people on the court who are so right-wing, now they've succeeded in overturning Roe. It well could come back and bite them in the ass, because the economy, as important as it is, that being your number one issue, doesn't mean that you're voting Republican. That being your number one issue means you're thinking to yourself, who's better equipped to do the right thing and bring us out of this? It's really not the Republicans that you can't name a policy that the Republicans have that are going to suddenly turn this economy around and, make a loaf of bread 25 cents. You can't.
It's not a policy thing. It's not a policy driven election. Sadly, I think it's going to be an anger driven election, the same thing or a frustration driven election. And I've got to wrap up, but to the point on young people, I'd love for you to come back regularly. It'd be great if you've got time. But anyway, I on the point on young people, I just want to quickly say that frustration, I think, fuels some of what you're talking about, a basic disgust with the system. They get it. It's a rigged system. Why are there only two parties? You could certainly open up the hood on the lack of real representation for voters. How is it that that one candidate loses the popular vote for president time and time again, and then somehow still ends up as president? I mean,
and the money is an important factor. And then you've got
money is
like Donald Trump now announcing that he's going to announce his candidacy, but for what reason? To avoid prosecution, because he's a criminal.
And to generate more money. All right, Pat, please join us again. Would you? Can you stop through? Yeah, I think this has been good for both of us in our relationship.
We love you, Pat.
The love that you're getting in the chat room. Go back and watch the video.
Courtney, give Courtney my love, please.
I will indeed. All right, and the best to your family too. Pat Thurston, everybody. Right on.